Hello, so Emma Norsgaard here from Team Movistar, reporting after stage 6 of Tour de France. So, yeah, today was it was hard. It was long. It was warm, and definitely not my day today. I much preferred yesterday, but that's also part of the game, is to have some bad days sometimes and suffer and going through the mountains soon. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward for the mountains to be done. Anyway, today was interesting. We had Shayla in the front, which was super nice. So the rest of us could chill until the final, and Liane became number 3 in the final sprint, which was really nice result. And she's really showing herself in a really, really nice way, and she has a really good shape at the moment. So we fully believe in her for the upcoming stages. And of course, we also have Mare, who is going for the GC, which is going to be interesting on the longer climbs also. She's really kind of anemic style, really like these long, hard climbs. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But overall, I think the team is happy. And yeah, it's just me suffering. You will see me in the gruppetto the next day. So, ciao.
Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey, and we are here to talk about the 6th stage of the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. With me today, the lovely Loren Rowney.
G'day everyone. We've made it to stage 6. It's been quite the tour so far, but we've got 2 more stages left to go, and the legs are still feeling okay.
And of course, Tilda Price.
Good evening. Happy Friday. I don't have the Friday feeling today.
It was a long day for everyone out there, and we had quite the stage and quite the finale of the stage, and we're going to dive into everything. The yellow jersey stayed on the back of Kasia Niewiadoma. She still leads the general classification by 16 seconds, but we have a new second place with Cedrine Cabal, the winner of the best young jersey classification in 2023, moving up after winning the stage, the first stage victory for a French woman in the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. We're going to talk about all of it. First and foremost, Loren Rowney actually rode the final 70 kilometers of the race. So Loren, how was it out there?
I mean, like I said, I've still got 2 days left in the legs because I only rode 1 day. No, it was a lot of fun out there. Like I think we've spoken about, the atmosphere is just incredible, and it was fun. I was with the Zwift crew and had a chance to sort of, talk through the stage, and we were kind of like, who is this good for? What do we think is going to happen? And we went over the first major climb, I would say, which was like only a Cat 4. It pitched really, really high at the start, but then it kind of like peaked and troughed. So it was pretty obvious from the climbing, like we did discuss that, maybe this could be, a good day for the break. It wasn't necessarily a climbers course. When you felt it. It was hard, but not like super hard. It wasn't going to be a day for the GC. And as we saw, it was very much a day where I think the GC riders could relax a bit. And Kasia did say in her post-race interview that everyone is just looking towards stage 7 and 8. And that was kind of evident today with how the race played out.
Yeah, and I think yesterday we already kind of got the sense, but this morning walking around the team buses, it was also pretty clear that stage 5 was absolutely brutal for everybody. You said it was way harder than it seemed, and it was definitely that way for all the riders who were coming back to their team buses saying, I thought it was supposed to be an easy day today. And Spratty Sprat in her audio diary yesterday. So we knew that yesterday was harder, and we know that there are 2 really, really hard days coming up. So it makes sense that today was maybe raced a little bit more conservatively. We had a massive break off the front from 85 kilometers to go that included some huge names. Fem Van Empel was off the front again. We had Marianne Vos, we had Ellen Van Dijk, Grace Brown, Niamh Fisher-Black, Maya Rus, Francesca Koch, and Soraya Paladin. I mean, it was a break of 18 riders. So it was a big break up there. And A few of those riders managed to stay out until 15.8 to go. Niamh Fisher-Black was kind of the main instigator in breaking the race apart with 28K to go over the Category 2 climb. She did a great job of kind of hitting out on her own, and she was followed by Grace Brown and Justine Gertze of AG Insurance-Soudal. And then they really started to come back and were caught when the GC riders that were part of a large group started to attack. And one of the main instigators there was Juliette Labousse, who it was literally home roads for her.
Yeah, it was amazing to be out there. I mean, I think if you look at my Instagram stories, it was just Juju and Juliette Labousse all over, painted over the roads, the signs. I think the television coverage did such a good job of covering that. The fans were just out there basically for Juliette. So we're on home roads and you could really feel that vibe. And I do wonder, the attacks that she was putting in a few times there, were they just for the fans?
I mean, I think this would have been a dream win for Juliette had things gone a little bit differently, but it's still a win for France. When Juliette had attacked, Cédrine Cabal said that she just was being patient. She was waiting for her moment, and she ended up attacking with 14.4 kilometers to go. At first, there was one rider with her, but she dropped her really, really quickly on the descent. And we know that Cabal can descend really, really well. She won Durango basically in horrendous conditions by descending faster than everyone else. And so we knew that it was going to be, a stage that she could do well on, even if nobody picked her for the stage. And it kind of comes as no surprise that she was able to descend fast enough to get a gap and then remain out there to the finish and win the stage. There was some moments where you were thinking, okay, she's up there in GC. How are they not chasing more? FDJ was doing a ton of work to try to bring her back, but they were pretty much the only ones. We had Niamh Bradbury up there for Kasia, making sure that the gap wasn't big enough that Cabal would take the leader's jersey as well, but it came pretty close.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of chatter after the finish that Canyon should have worked more, and FDJ in particular, I spoke to a couple of their riders, were not very happy that Canyon hadn't contributed, but I don't think that's totally fair because they were keeping the break in check, because they could have lost the jersey to a rider in the break. I think it wasn't Vos, but there was a rider who went into virtual yellow at one point, so they kind of used a lot of their cards doing that. And FDJ wanted to go for the stage win, and that's why they were a bit bothered, but Canyon weren't interested in the stage win, and they knew that, Kasia said at the finish, they knew that the pace would come up in the finish anyway. So I think they played it pretty well, really, and it's not their fault that FDJ wanted to win the stage and no one else did.
And to be fair to Canyon, they were basically isolated. Niamh Bradbury was the only teammate that Kasia had in that group. And, Kasia needs to save her bullets for the final two stages. And I don't think that they don't see Cédrine Cabal as a threat. I think, she's an incredible rider, but when it comes to the general classification, it would be extremely impressive if she was able to win this whole thing. I think that Canyon and Kasia really see Demi as the rider that they need to go up against in the next 2 days, and giving Cédrine Cabal 21 seconds on the group that they were in and 10 bonus seconds isn't really a race ending moment. And just like Kasia, Demi Vollering was also basically isolated. She only had Niamh Fisher-Black in that group with her, and Niamh had been in the breakaway all day, so she would have been really tired. So it's hard to fault them for not working harder. I think they were working as hard as they could in that moment. We actually have an audio diary from FDJ's Lea Curinier, so let's hear from her really quick, see what the team's saying inside.
Hey, Abby, Loren, Tilda, and listener. It's Lea Curinier from FDJ-Suez. So today it was the stage 6 on Le Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. It was again a really hard day with warm temperature from the start to the finish in Morteau. And it was also really fast today, more than 39k per hour. So yeah, really fast. We had really big ambitions today, so that was perfect for us on the paper. The plan was to be in the breakaway And Grace did a really good job because she riding in front, so that was really perfect for us. And we also wanted to make the race harder for Evita in the final, so she could use Grace as a satellite to win the stage, but that didn't work as planned. Cycling, it's never easy, but Evita finished 9, and yeah, for sure she saw is still in the game for the GC, and today she was really strong, and I'm sure the next 2 days will be really great for us. And also today, Céline Carbol is the first French rider to win the stage, and I think it's really great for the French cycling and also for the little girl. Of course, we would like prefer Evita to win, but we are happy for her, and yeah, for sure, that's really nice to see that. But now we are focused with the team for the next 2 days, because I think we can really play for the victory, and we are really motivated for that. So yeah, tomorrow we are riding the Alps. So I think yeah, we're waiting since a long time for these 2 stages. So yeah, now we try to recover and start again tomorrow, and we will give everything until the line.
We need to talk a little bit more about Cédrine Cabal, because she's a rider who's come up a lot in the last 2 years. She won the youth classification last year at the Tour by a little over 12 minutes. And this win today is easily the biggest win of her career so far. Also the biggest win that Ceratizit WNT has had in quite some years. They're a team that, you know, has been around for quite a while. They've won 2 Vuelta a Españas before it was a week-long race, back when it was only a couple stages. But they've had a team restructuring after the 2021 season, and this is kind of their biggest win since then. They've only won a stage of Tour de Romandie with Martelac since the team was basically overhauled. And so for them to win a stage of the Tour and to do it with a French rider, and also with a rider who, you know, kind of made her mark on cycling for the first time at last year's Tour, is just an incredible story.
Yeah, and like you were saying, I think they're a team that we've discussed in the past when every year it comes around that teams are applying for World Tour licenses, and we're kind of like, what have they done in the past years? Do they deserve a license? And I guess on that note, what a win like this at the Tour de France Femmebec Zwift can do for a team like that, not just the rider, but for the team and the sponsors moving forwards. I'm not sure who is going to that team or who's leaving that team in the next year. I know Cabal is signed on for another couple of years at least, because when I was standing at the finish line, I heard people saying, oh, well, who's going to pick her up next? But they're going to have to wait a couple of years or potentially buy her out of her contract, I'd say. Definitely a rider with huge potential. I'm really curious to see what she does in the next 2 stages, but I don't see her being a threat to GC.
Yeah, I think she's an interesting rider, because I think she kind of came into last year's race as the very big favourite for that jersey, because she'd been so strong all year and in a lot of similar kind of races, and she's had a slightly different program this year, and she kind of won earlier in the year and in Spain and stuff like that, and I think she was kind of left off the list of favourites a bit, and also maybe that comes from the fact that, you know, the French have 2 huge names in this race, in Juliette and Evita, who have kind of taken the headlines. But yeah, Cédrine has been a really strong rider for a couple of years, and it kind of felt like this was coming. It was a day that really suited her, being very aggressive and going in the right moment. And despite the talent that we have seen from her, she's probably a rider that runs under the radar a little bit, in that when she goes, it's not immediate panic stations for other teams. That might change in years to come. And she spoke a little bit in her press conference in French about her teammates, and that she had been dreaming about winning a stage, and she didn't quite know which one she was targeting. There were a few that she had her eye on, but she kind of woke up this morning and her roommate said to her, yeah, I think today's the day for you, and they kind of had a joke about it. But you know, it paid off after not being in the ideal situation with the breakaway. they really turned that around. And although they don't have the biggest names in that team, they have been putting in the work despite losing Marta Lack yesterday. So it's a super well-deserved win for them, and one that's really been coming for Sudrine Cabal. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a surprise by any means.
Yeah, and I mean, earlier in the week, she performed so well in that short TT, that clearly in really good form. And just thinking back to that win is it Durango? She pretty much pulled off a similar move, right? It was like going over the top of the last climb and then just completely bombed the descent. It was such a fast run into the finish. Like Abby mentioned, I rode the last 70 kilometers of this race, and we were talking about it on the ride that if a rider had a gap, like there was just no coming back because it was just too fast at that point. And when you have a rider like that can descend like a demon, it was just beautifully timed.
Maybe if Grace Brown hadn't spent the entire day in the break, she would have had a little bit more firepower to at least limit that distance that they had to Cabal. But even with Grace Brown on the front, they weren't making any headroads into getting closer to her. And so it was just a really gutsy move, and kind of the kind of thing you want to see at the Tour de France Femme, and especially from a French rider. It will mean a lot to the French people to have seen this win, and the crowds were amazing today. And you know, I know that there's a lot of French riders who started this race and pick this day and wish that they could have won this day. It was a special race for, obviously, like we said, Le Bus, but also for Avita Music. And they'll be gutted that they didn't win, but it was, you know, it still went to the French.
Yeah, it's been it weirdly feels like a long time coming, even though I think today was only the 22nd stage of this race ever. But, you know, we always talk about home winners at the Tour, whether that's in the men's race or this race. And in the women's side, like, there are hugely talented French riders, but obviously we know that the sport has been so dominated by the Dutch in this race and in every other race, and the Belgians, the Italians, and the French have been they're always there. There's a really strong kind of continental level scene here, but they hadn't quite had that win. So it will be a really big one, and it will mean a lot to the race, because these are the kind of things that attract people who wouldn't otherwise be interested in the sport, because people know their local rider. They know French riders. They have an interest in the home nation, whoever they are. And that's why we saw so much support today, because they were out for their local riders. So, you know, this will be a story that's on front pages tomorrow in regional newspapers, and probably will get a bit of extra mention in L'Equipe compared to Blanca Vas winning, which, you know, it might sound slightly tokenistic and nationalistic, but that's what gets this race out in front of other people. And the French need a new hero, and I think Abby, you wrote this a while ago, it probably going to be a woman when it comes to cycling.
And just think, guys, in 2025, who's coming back?
Yeah,
PFP.
Pauline Ferrand-Prévot.
So maybe we're going to get a whole bunch of new fans coming over to women's cycling.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, I think one of the big questions now around Cabal is, can she hold on to a top spot in the GC, even if the top spot is maybe a little bit of a stretch for her with, you know, the big climbs coming up. And she's a phenomenal climber, but when it comes to Demi and Kasia, we're going to see a big fight there. And we said it already, but for Cabal, can she hold on to a top spot? Because if you're looking at the riders who are close to her, I mean, it's still, you know, relatively close in the top 20 on GC. Everyone's within 2.5 minutes in the top 20 on GC. So you still have a lot of riders and a lot of movement that we're going to see tomorrow. Voss will probably drop out of the top 10. You know, Lucinda Brand will probably drop out of the top 10. There's a lot of riders that will not be in the same place tomorrow, but Cabal is one who can continue to fly under the radar a little bit, remaining in the top 10 on GC as well within her capabilities. And I think it's just how high up she can finish. And now you have Sarah Tiz at WNT will be doing everything in their power to make sure that she can have a high finish in this general classification, maybe even finish on the podium. There's one other rider who really drew a lot of attention today because she was in the break all day. She was going for those bonus points, and then she was dropped. She was chasing, and she still managed to pull out a second place. And that's the GOAT, Marianne Vos. She had an incredible day today up in the break, and I think this would have been a perfect day for her obviously, had Kerbal not been off the front. She walked away with second place on the stage, but now she's in the green jersey. And looking at the points and the stages for the next couple days, I think there's very little competition for the rest of the race. All she has to do is really finish. And it's not often that you see the green jersey go to a rider who didn't win a stage. Maybe in the men's race because there's just more points on offer and there's more stages. But in the women's race, we've only got, a certain number of stages and a certain number of points. So Vos walking away from this race with a green jersey and no stage win is going to be a bit bittersweet, I think, if she can pull it off. She obviously was second at the Olympics recently, and she would have really wanted to win a stage of this race. And she cut a lot of races out of her calendar this year in order to be able to come to this race on perfect form. And she's here and she's on flying form, and not winning a stage is going to hurt, but the green jersey is going to pad that pain a little bit.
Well, that's it. I mean, Visma Lisa Bike, they haven't taken a stage this tour, and with the 2 stages coming up, I don't think it's going to happen with what they've got to come. So to walk away with the green jersey, they got to be happy with that. They're going to stand on the podium on the final day, and no stage win, but they get to go home with a jersey. I don't see how Vos can lose this jersey. You seem to think, Abby, that she'll make it to the sprint points tomorrow, perhaps. But I think even if she doesn't make it to the sprint points, the people who are going to be going for those are not her contenders. So I would say it's job done. She's got that jersey on her back.
Yeah, the only person who could really take the jersey off of her is the person that she took it from, Charlotte Kool. And Kool has really been struggling these last 2 days with the climbs. She was out the back super early tomorrow, and there's some climbing even before the sprint point tomorrow. So if there's a rider who can sprint quite fast and can climb relatively well, who's going to be able to get to those sprint points and take them, it's Vos. And we saw her climbing incredibly well at the Volta Catalunya earlier this year. We know she won the Queen stage at that race. So we know she's climbing pretty well for a sprinter at the moment. And perhaps that's taken a bit of her top end, but it's enough to get her to that sprint tomorrow, I think, and get some more points to pad that win. And then if that happens, all she has to do is finish on Sunday. Let's talk about the next 2 days because they're going to be huge. And before we dive into that, I want to hear from a rider who is probably really looking forward to the next 2 days, and that's Sarah Gigante.
Hi, Abby and Escape Collective. It's Sarah Gigante here after another hard day. We had stage 6 today, so longest stage yet, I think. Actually, I'm losing track already. It was about 159 kilometers with neutral. Maybe that's not the longest, but anyway, it felt long because it was hard. And yesterday I didn't do an audio diary, but oh my gosh, it was so brutal. So I think I was still feeling the effects today. And I'm happy I could survive to the end in almost the main front group. So what happened was a flat and pretty easy first half of the race. And in that first half, a really big breakaway got away with some really big names. About 18 riders, including people like Marianne Vos and Grace Brown. And most importantly for us, Justine, which was amazing because she's already been eyeing up the QOM jersey, and she had racked up, I think, 7 points by the end of yesterday's stage. So it was amazing to have her in the breakaway because she could take more points on I think there were 5 climbs today, and no massive climbs, just category 3 and 4 climbs. But so good that she could be in there to take points. And actually she's currently leading the classification, so we're so excited to see her in her polka dots tomorrow. Like, we've got the decorations for her garment and definitely a helmet with polka dots. She's, of course, wearing the skin suit from the organisation with polka dots. We're hoping that we'll be able to get a specialised bike with polka dots. If not, we have little red stickers to the rescue. And I've even asked if she minds if I put red zinc all over her, like little basically pimples all over her face. Wouldn't that be so cool? Anyway, I don't think she'll say yes to that, but I just really want to make her as polka dotty as possible because how cool to be leading a classification in the Tour de France. That is awesome. And yes, I was going to ask Julie, my roommate, again what her highlight of today was, but I knew she'd be going to massage when I recorded this, so I'll have to just tell you what she said. And yeah, unsurprisingly, her highlight was hearing that Justine, in the radio, hearing that Justine was now leading the QOM classifications. That was a really good moment. And yeah, after that first flat half of the race, well, flat-ish, then yeah, that's where our race kicked off in the peloton. So we had a climb about 80 kilometres in. It wasn't too hard. Another climb at 100 kilometres in. It wasn't too hard. Each time I made an effort to move up, I thought maybe this is where it will explode and yeah, I need to be at the front. The peloton will get smaller. But actually it all stayed together, I think, until the next climb at 127 kilometres, I think what I wrote on my stem notes. And yeah, that one was full gas. And yeah, the peloton really reduced, probably 30 or 40 riders at that point, and then it was actually just a short 2-kilometre climb at 10 Ks later. That was the most brutal of all. So yeah, a really hard day, but an amazing day with Justine taking a lead in the Tour de France. It's so cool. And yeah, unfortunately Kim Lecourt, I think today's stage normally would have suited her really well, the terrain, but yeah, I mean, she's been amazing all year, and just with the whole season all at once and then a big crash yesterday, I think she struggled a bit today, but I'm so proud that she kept fighting. You know, you don't want to stop the tour early, so it's good that she got to the end. Actually, she did really well as well, but I think she's disappointed, but we're really proud that she's still giving it her best, and we have 2 more days to fight, so the best 2 in my eyes. I was just looking, it's meant to be 5 hours 15 tomorrow, so a pretty long stage, about 160 kilometres again, and 2,300 metres climbing, but finally some longer climbs. So I think the best one is 12 kilometres at 5%. So I don't think they're that steep, but I mean, 5% average, you never know what that might mean. I'll have to look on VeloViewer. Perhaps it's like 2% in parts and 17% in parts, because I discovered that today. Some rude shock that the 6% climb actually had 13% parts. Yeah. There were actually some really cool signs on the climbs. Like when you think, gee, this is really hard. Is it like I'm absolutely creeping? And then you see this big like billboard and it says the percentage gradient. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's cool. So no wonder we're going like full gas and hardly going anywhere. It's like 15% right now. There were other cool things like people with chainsaws on the side of the road. I think that was the best. The part when I was like, ooh, now I really feel like I'm in the tour. And other cool things, so many people on the side of the road have like DIY basketball hoop kind of things, or even just cardboard sheets with a hole in them, and you have to throw your biddens in. I've never done it because I'm so nervous about getting disqualified or fined or given a time penalty for not just discarding my bidden at the feet of a swanee. So I've only ever given it to swanees, but I'm so tempted to try one day. But yeah, no, I'm too much of a goody two-shoes for that, but it does look very fun. Also, maybe the real reason I'm not doing it is because I know I have a terrible sense of aim, me and balls. That's why I do cycling, right? Okay, 3 more points I wanted to say. I have managed to keep my Duolingo streak. I've used all my streak freezes. It wasn't a good start to the week. When I saw I had, 2 streak freezes used up, 2 out of 2, already by Sunday, the day before the race. And I never used my streak freezers, so this was pretty rare. I was like, oh dear, I'm so distracted. How am I going to make it until the following, well, maybe I'll be in like post-tour also distraction mode. So how am I going to make it like 9 more days without losing my 600-day streak? But we're still surviving. I've switched to doing it in the morning rather than at night, because by the time I get to nighttime, I'm fried. that's why I'm just rambling randomly. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say was I brought a book to read and I haven't even opened the first page. So it's been, I don't even know what we do with all our time, but I feel like I've just been going full gas. But they're all marvelous things, like, pretty much eating, sleeping, getting massage, and then going to presentation, seeing all the crowds, racing our bikes. So, yeah, it's a good life. Actually, I'm just off to massage now, so I'll leave you to listen to the next audio diary. And, yeah, I'll be back on Sunday after the grand finale.
Okay, so the next 2 stages. We've got a lot of climbing, and tomorrow's the first stage that finishes on a mountaintop. It's 2 category 2s back to back with a 2-kilometer descent in between the 2. So it's basically a category 1. It climbs for 5 kilometers and then dips for 2 kilometers and climbs for 7 kilometers or something like that. So it's a lot of climbing at the end of this race. And while it's probably not going to be as challenging as stage 8, it's also 166 kilometers long. So it's going to be a really, really long day with both of these climbs at the end. And I think tomorrow is when the real battle between Kasia and Demi is going to heat up. The question is, who can do what? Who is actually climbing better? How is Demi feeling? Well, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, me and Loren are just taking a closer look at the profile here. And it's just so up and down. Like, you've got the 5 categorized climbs, but there's kind of no let up in the middle of those. And officially with the 2 final climbs combined, you're looking at about 13k of categorized climbing, but really the road is going up from, like, you could even say like 30 kilometers out. It's a real grind up to the top, and that dip in the middle won't really mean much to the riders, I don't think. It's one of those ones where if Annemiek van Vleuten was here, you'd be thinking, oh my god, is she going to go on the first climb, the Col de la Croix de la Serre? But it's kind of hard to predict how this will go tomorrow, and it could be one of those slow burn days where things stay together towards the final, and then it's a grind up to the line.
That's right, Tilda. And when you're going into this race tomorrow and you're 2 of the top teams, Canyon SRAM Racing and SD Worx Pro Time, what are you thinking going into this stage? Because like we mentioned today, Kasia only had Niamh there at the end, and Demi only had Niamh Fisher Black. So they've only got 1 rider each, which means actually they're going to be well paired in terms of support. That's not going to be an issue. In terms of other teams, I think it's going to be a similar situation. There's going to be riders, GC contenders by themselves or with one other. So, I mean, if you're Demi going into tomorrow, you're a minute 20 down, you're feeling really confident about your form coming into this race. Obviously today, she looked fine. She was able to follow those accelerations from Lebu and was just staying on the wheel of Kasia, trying to probably have an easier day. I think everyone racing for GC other than Lebu, who just wanted to maybe give the crowds a little bit of something, was taking it, not easy, but just saving the legs for tomorrow. So, yeah, I don't know. I really can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow, but it is long. It's 166 kilometers with some serious climbing in it. So I can see them maybe like the second last stage of the Giro, kind of racing in a similar way, like doing that first lap, what they did in the Giro, just racing at a good tempo and then going all in for the finish, because of course they've still got the climbing on stage 8.
Yeah, and stage 8 is going to be the stage that's a lot more important to the GC riders and a lot more challenging. There's a lot more that can happen on the 8th stage. And so I think you're right. I think tomorrow is going to be a great race, but potentially a little bit more conservative on the climbs. And it really depends who's there, because while, everyone's looking at Kasia and Demi, there's also a lot of really, really strong climbers that are still up there in GC. We talked about Paulina Roarkes earlier in the week. There's a lot of climbers up there that, might find themselves a little bit surprised to be so well placed in the general classification. Liane Lippert came into this race on a Giro stage win, but had a really rough early season coming back from the off-season injury that she had. And there's a lot of riders who will want to take advantage of the stage tomorrow, the fact that the climbs aren't as hard as Sunday, and maybe want to use that because they're going to excel more tomorrow than they are on Sunday. And so that it's kind of a little bit of an interesting situation. And there's a lot that can still happen tomorrow. And I think much like the last 2 days, it's like, okay, we just have to see it.
I think, not to always be the contrarian one on the podcast, but I do think that because there's the chance of wearing yellow on Sunday is also up for grabs here. And we heard a little bit from Anna van der Breggen at the finish, and she was very coy with her words and said that SD Worx had some tricks up their sleeve. And I don't think it's crazy to say there's a scenario where they really smash it up that first climb. It is long, and it is actually the steepest average that they have all day. Like, you could really put riders in trouble there and really catch some people out, and not necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily be Demi dropping Cassia or anything like that, but if you can put her helpers in trouble, then you're putting her in trouble too, with the rest of the stage still to come. And I think there will be a part of Demi Vollering who earlier this week was already dreaming of wearing yellow on Alpe d'Huez and winning on Alpe d'Huez in the yellow jersey, going around Dutch corner, defending her title. Like, there are special things there, or she has been obviously quiet today after the crash, and I think there will be a little bit of extra motivation to lay their cards on the table one day early and stake the claim, because if they could have this race a bit more wrapped up by Sunday, that wouldn't be a bad situation for them to be in terms of the prestige and the feelings, and having to just worry a bit less on Alpe d'Huez.
Yeah, and if they do that and Demi takes the jersey tomorrow, it's going to be really, really hard for Kasia to take it back on Alpe d'Huez.
Yeah, exactly. We were trying to do some math earlier to figure out, if Demi does get a gap on Kasia, like what sort of gap can she get this year? Because I think Kasia is a different rider this year. She's better. And I think we're going to see something special, I hope, in these high mountains. And I think last year on the final climb, she put a minute 28 into her. And like Demi only made her move with how many kilometers to go? I think it was 4. So we were kind of thinking, actually what Tilda's saying here, if she puts her under pressure on a 12-kilometer climb, and then you've still got this massive finishing climb tomorrow, it's quite possible.
Well, a lot of questions will be answered. There's a lot of other riders that we're curious how they're going to go in these final days. Obviously, Puck Pieterse, who's in the best young rider jersey at the moment. Curious about her, Sharon Van Anrooy, and, Gaia Riolini, what Little Trek is going to do. So many questions, and only the race can answer them. I'm wondering about cheese.
It's the penultimate stage of this year's Tour de France Femmes, and it's a major mountain stage in the Alps. However, we start in the Jura, not far from the border with Switzerland. It's home to one of my favourite cheeses, so pretty please can I do cheese one more time. The Jura mountain range is home to Quinty, and since 1958 this cheese has the AOP, the Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée. It's a quality mark, and it indicates the brand is protected. Not every cheese that is similar in taste and look can call itself Quinty. But before a cheese is AOP, it has to follow some rules. The milk from which the cheese is made must come from a specific breed of cows, the so-called Montbéliarde. You can see them everywhere in this region. And the milk from these cows must be processed within 24 hours. The cows must have enough space. In summer, they graze high up in the mountains and mainly eat herbs and various grasses. Traditionally, Quinty is produced in small cheese dairies in mountain chalets in the Jura. And these are the so-called fruitières. They are joint workshops whose history dates back to the 13th century. The large, round cheeses can weigh 40 to 80 kilos, and they've been produced in the same way for centuries. You need at least 500 litres of milk per cheese. And this required cooperation between the farmers, because one farmer could never supply so much milk in one day. You could say it took a team to produce something good. Teamwork makes the dream work, and that also goes for cheese. The cheese then is removed from the mould after just a few hours and remains in the cheese factory for a week to dry. After this, it goes to the so-called maturation cellar for 4 to 24 months. And during this period, the cheeses are regularly salted and turned. For me, the perfect Quinty is a relatively young one, around 6 to 9 months, and you can buy it in every supermarket. If you don't buy the bottom shelf version, major supermarkets have Quinty of relatively good quality. In the final of the stage, we pass the Lac d'Annecy. It's a scenic place that will probably generate some lovely television images. In terms of volume, it's the second largest lake in France, after the Lac de Bourget, which is near Aix-les-Bains, which is 30-odd kilometers to the west. It formed around 18,000 years ago when the glaciers melted. In the 1950s, the lake was threatened by eutrophication, which occurs when the environment becomes enriched with nutrients, increasing the amount of plant and algae growth. And this was due to the influx of sewage from villages around the lake. Some people claim this was a natural process and the price of progress, but luckily the alarm was raised, mainly through the efforts of Dr. Paul Servetas. 8 communities decided to take action to protect the lake. In 1957, the SILA, the Syndicat Intercommunal du Lac d'Annecy, was created. This organization represented 113 communities with a combined population of 250,000. In 1957, the first sewage treatment system was built, complete with catch basins, pumping stations, and a treatment plant. A new sewage treatment plant was commissioned in 1994. And the lake now receives only rainwater and water from the streams flowing into it. And the lake has now become one of the cleanest in Europe. There is one small environmental problem though. Because of a microscopic larva called the duck flea, it's banned to feed the ducks in the lake because the bird is host to this small larva. It's not harmful to humans, but it causes a persistent week-long itch. If you're caught feeding the ducks, you can be fined.
All right, we're going to wrap up this episode. We've got a lot to look forward to this weekend, and I hope everybody will be watching. The final audio diary we have today is a new fan favorite, definitely a favorite of the three of us here, Quinty Ton of the Liv AlUla Jayco team. We'll be back tomorrow to break down all the racing on the Wheel Talk podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And if you're not a member of Escape Collective, perhaps consider signing up.
There we go. Stage 6 of the Tour de France, famous avec Swift. Here I am, Quinty Ton, rider of Liv AlUla Jayco, and I will take you with me on today's stage. I will give a bit of a summary, and I will say some other things about my day or my life as a pro cyclist who's riding the Tour de France. Today was a stage in French, actually, because we have a full Tour de France, only it's different than the man. The man will do 3 weeks of racing straight with some rest days. But we will only do 7 days of racing with 1 double day. So we have 8 stages in 7 days. People ask me, do you want more? I think in the future it will be nice to have more, but the women's peloton is really growing over the years and it's going really fast. But I think the tour needs to have step-by-step a longer stage race. For now, the 7 days are good. I think we will have already a higher level of girls who are riding here, and the teams are way more professional than, let's say, 5 years ago. But I think step by step we can grow towards like a 2-week Le Tour de France avec Swift. But for now it's maybe too fast. Also, with the men you have really a big team with a lot of riders. For here, most of the teams in the women's peloton have around 15 riders. So that means that the riders need to ride a lot of races, and it's sometimes hard to divide the races. So also a sprinter needs sometimes to go to the climbing races, and in the men's peloton you can split it a bit more. So basically, some riders do almost every World Tour race on the calendar. And if you see a guy like Pogacar, he is for sure not riding every World Tour race on the calendar. So I think in a few years, when the women's teams are getting bigger, the level is getting higher, then it will be possible to ride a 2 weeks tour. But for now, I'm okay with the 7 days. And today was it's so hard. Day 5 and stage 6. We can call it maybe an intermediate or a hilly stage, but not a mountain stage. For me, it was a hilly stage. For the climbers, it was maybe not so much climbing. Today, our goal was to be in the break, and we did. Amber did a fantastic job to make it to the break, but I think we all were very committed to do it. Everyone was there to jump into the breaks who are possibly going, but in the end, one break went and Amber paid. My teammate was in, and she did a good job. But on the end, on the climbs, it exploded. Luckily, we had our leader Mavi in the front together with our other 2 climbers, and Amber was still there up front. So then she could help Mavi a bit to try her best for a stage win, because that's what she did. She rode aggressive, and I think today we don't have any regrets. We finished almost in Swish. Now we're back in the hotel, and we were already preparing for tomorrow. It's again a long day, because today we had almost 160k. Tomorrow we will head, including the neutral, head over the 170k. So long days. And then we really enter the mountains. For me, it's the next couple of days trying to help the climbers as much as possible, and then save my energy for the next day. Because the final day will be on top of the Alpe d'Huez. And I'm already looking forward to the Alpe d'Huez. If you see how many people there were on the road today, it was incredible. The start in the Netherlands, there were a lot of people on the road, but today was also amazing. It almost felt as big as you watch the men's Tour de France. It's almost as big as this. So that feels so grateful. Next, that all those people come cheering for the women's cycling. Yeah, it's nice. What to tell else about the day? Maybe good to not tell you about the day, but maybe a bit more about where I came from. Because maybe if you can hear, I'm not a native English speaker. I come from the Netherlands, and this is my first year in Liv AlUla Jayco. But I was already a pro cyclist 2 years, but then in another Liv team. So all my pro years I rode on the Liv bike, which I actually really like. And before I was in a small continental team, but a really small continental team in my own country. And I studied physiotherapy. At the moment I did the study, I never thought I'm going to make it to as a pro cyclist. I So I also never dreamed of it. Sometimes you hear the very beautiful stories of people who are already dreaming to be a pro cyclist from their youth, but that's not the case. I was just studying physiotherapy, and I wanted to work as a physiotherapist and help people with their complaints and with their injuries. And now I'm on the other side of the road. I'm now on the bike, and people help me with my complaints and injuries. But I really like it, and I want to try to do this live as long as possible, as long as I feel that I can improve, that I can get more out of it. And for sure, at this moment, it's like this. I can still can improve in a lot of ways, such as physically, mentally, tactically, positioning in the peloton. You can call it. So that's also my goal for the upcoming months, upcoming years, hopefully a lot of years, to learn as much as possible, to improve, and to enjoy the life. Because I think as soon as you don't enjoy it, you have to ask yourself, is this the job for me? But at this moment, I can fully say, yes, I enjoy this life, and I hope a lot of nice things are coming. Thank you all for listening, and I wish you all the best, and hope to see you next to the road to support us or on the bike. Bye.